Hey everybody, Dustin DePirek here, calling the Standygram. Getting ready for IU Missouri, 8 o'clock prime time, Big Ten Network game I think, only game all year, regular season game all year between Big Ten and SEC opponents, whatever that means. I don't know if that makes sense, but it's the only one, Indiana Missouri, and definitely looks like a game in which many points will probably be scored. Is that what, should this be what we're expecting? I mean, are we going to see 50-40, something like that?
I don't know if it'll get quite to that extent, but yeah, I do think we might be having our post-game video on Sunday rather than Saturday.
That's definitely going to happen. We've got no chance of getting this done by midnight. No way.
No. Anyhow, so yeah, I do think it'll be an elongated game with a lot of points. Should be fun to watch, actually. Missouri's offense is quite a bit like Indiana's. It's a spread. They got wideouts. I mean, it's one of the few wideout cores I've watched just on my DVR that I would kind of put in the same category with Indiana's. They have a lot of guys that can play.
And they're bigger.
And Dorial Green Beckham is 6'6", and he's a guy that was the #1 ranked recruit for any position in the nation a couple of years ago. So he's a stud, but he's not the only one. He's got 12 catches on the year through 2 games, and they got 4 other guys with 10 apiece.
Yeah.
So they have much like Indiana, they have a deep receiving core. They also have 2 primary running backs, both of whom are really good. Once again, kind of similar to Tevin Coleman and Stephen Houston kind of guys.
And it's more spread out. They've got 4 guys that have rushed for over 100 in the first 2
They
games.
do. They got a really dangerous return guy, and they got a 5th-year senior quarterback, James Franklin, who is really adept at keeping plays alive and can throw the ball a long way. And he's accurate too. He's completing 2/3 of his passes. He's right at 67%. So they just look good. I mean, they look like a good offense. And Franklin played hurt last year. Jesse, one of the tailbacks, who missed the entire year with a bad knee injury. They had 3 offensive linemen get hurt. So they kind of struggled through their first SEC season and went 5-7. But all those guys are healthy now. Yeah. And I think they're a formidable team. And it should be a lot of points scored.
Yeah, no, lots. I mean, you mentioned Franklin. Certainly, he's the guy that makes it go. He's already rushed for more yards, as many yards this year as he did all of last year. I think literally, maybe he has 1 fewer. Just because last year he was dealing with all kinds of injuries, just never really got it going. And you forget, man, 2 years ago he threw for 2,800 yards, 21 scores, rushed for 15 touchdowns, close to 1,000 yards. So that's a guy that's really got it all kind of put together. And Kevin Wilson made a point. He said, usually everyone says dual threat quarterback, and what they really mean is he can run. That maybe that second part of the equation isn't necessarily there. With Franklin, it's really there, and he's got a cannon.
Kevin looked at him in terms of recruiting when he was in Oklahoma, because he's from Franklin's from Texas. And, Kevin's well aware of how potent this guy is, and I think the Indiana defenders are too. This will be a really legit test for Indiana's young and young defense that hasn't proved itself yet, but had an encouraging performance last week against Bowling Green. So we'll see if they can follow that up with a few stops tomorrow night, but it'll be a challenge. Yeah.
No, this is kind of the biggest where are they really game. Because, I mean, even obviously, Bowling Green had some offense, was a pretty good MAC team, and Indiana pretty much smoked them, held them to 3 points, really with the, they had 10, but obviously 7 of those were on the punt block. This is probably the first team that's kind of, they obviously had the Navy game, which was the issue, which is a totally different offense than they will never see again this year anyway, at least this group will never see again. This is, you don't want to go so far as to call Missouri conventional because, or traditional or whatever. I mean, they're a wide open spread offense. It's like truly all over the place.
Pretty similar.
Yeah, but it's similar to what just about everybody else is doing at this point. It's just really spreading it out and throwing, having a whole bunch of wide receivers, a whole bunch of talent, just a whole bunch of guys in a spread formation, that kind of thing. But, this tells you what they can do, basically, against an offense that can really put a lot of points on the board. You're going to find out, okay, how good is this team really defensively? How good or how bad is this team really defensively?
And I think like a lot of young units, I mean, this defense is going to have good days and bad days. It'll be a little bit up and down. If it has a good day tomorrow night, if it has a good day against Missouri, that's a very good sign. Because I think this is one, on paper, this is one of the best offenses that they'll see all season.
Sure.
And so, so we'll see how that goes. I mean, when I at least built up Bowling Green last week as a legitimate challenge, which I actually think it was, but especially on defense. I think Bowling Green's got one of the best defenses in the MAC.
Yeah.
And I think Indiana going through it like tissue paper was a really good sign
Yeah, a good sign for Indiana's offense. Yeah.
But this offense that Missouri has is a better offense than Bowling Green's, and it's a better offense than a lot of teams Indiana will probably see as the season progresses. And so, well, you know, as I said, if Indiana gets 4, 5, 6 stops tomorrow, that'll be a good sign.
Yeah, no, definitely. I mean, obviously the interesting matchup. You know, last week the cornerbacks got tested a lot. This week it's going to be even different, much different. I mean, those guys they played some good receivers. Yeah. They played some good receivers last week, but this week they're just giving up a lot of size this time around. I mean, Chris Gallen was a big 6'4" guy at Bowling Green, but they're 6'4", 6'5", 6'6". You know, out of the three wideouts, they got a fourth guy who's 6'2".
And they're big guys.
Yeah, Green Beckham is massive. I mean, Green Beckham is truly like the, almost mutant prototype of what a wide receiver is supposed to look like. That dude looked like, I remember even when you saw him just at like Under Armour All-American game or whichever one it was that he played in. Or maybe I think it was the U.S. Army game because he played with Gunnar Kiel.
He did.
And he was just humongous then. He's bigger now. And, obviously Indiana's corners have done pretty well. Michael Hunter and Tim Bennett have been solid. If there's been any part of the defense so far this year for Indiana that's really been promising that you can look at and say, hey, that's a bright spot there. That's better than we're used to seeing at that spot. It's cornerback. They haven't been good at there in a while, and this is, Tim Bennett's played really well. Michael Hunter's been really solid. They had 7 pass breakups last week, but they're going to give up a lot of size. I mean, Bennett plays bigger than he is, but he's 5'9".
Exactly.
You're giving up, so that's going to be very interesting to see how do they make up for that lack of height.
Yeah, well, I mean, you're exactly right. They had 12 pass breakups as a team last week, which was a heck of a performance. 7 from the starting cornerbacks.
Most of those were knocked out. Well, not most of those. They had 7 from the corners, and then the rest of them were knocked out at the line.
3 at the line, right?
Yeah,
exactly. No, but anyway, it's going to be fun, and if Indiana has to score a lot of points to be competitive and to win against Missouri, it might, because I'm not sure Missouri's pass defense is its strong suit either.
No.
And Missouri is very athletic. They're very fast. The whole team's fast. They're good at applying pressure. They'll bring blitzes occasionally and whatnot, and they'll take chances. Their front four, I think, is capable of rushing the passer. But here's the thing: I think if Indiana's offensive line keeps Nate Sudfeld clean, I think Indiana could throw on these guys.
Yeah.
So we'll see how that works out.
Yeah. I got this question from a couple of different places. I thought it was interesting. It's just obviously, more or less rhetorical. I mean, there's no way of defining this. But, people ask, is this the biggest Indiana game in a while? Is this the biggest football game Indiana's had in a while? And certainly in terms of, potential, importance. Certainly the Wisconsin game last year, that if they would have won that game, they would have had the inside track for the Leaders Division. Obviously, it didn't come close to working out that way.
Right, that came to mind for me. That was after 2 straight wins, and they had a lot of people looking at them saying, because somewhat amazingly, it was had they won that game, they might have actually ended up in the Big Ten championship game.
Yeah,
but it did not go well. I do think this is a big deal for any number of reasons. One of which is a lot of people are going to be looking at it again. It's the last day. It's the last game of the day, and really one of the big matchups involving a Big Ten school on Saturday. You've got Michigan State at Notre Dame. It's kind of a big game.
Certainly.
Conference play actually starts. Purdue goes up to visit Wisconsin, but it's just a single game.
Right.
Across the board, conference play doesn't start until next week. But I think a lot of eyeballs are going to be focused on Bloomington on Saturday night by the time that game rolls around, and including a lot of somewhat casual fans. And once again, it was a nice performance last week, a big win last week. It was a big win last week.
Yeah. And
they're going to be checking out the Hoosiers again. And I think it's a big game to try and once again build fan base, build enthusiasm. You want to go into that bye week 3-1 instead of 2-2. You do have the bye week coming up, leading up to, so you have 2 weeks to prepare for the Penn State game, the Big Ten opener for Indiana here at home. So if you want a really enthusiastic, rocking crowd for the Penn State game, a win over Missouri might really help create that. So there's going to be a lot of really key recruits at the game tomorrow.
Yeah, they do have a pretty long list
of recruits. How does the game go? How does the crowd react? Do they have a big crowd? a lot of that is going to matter. So yeah, it's a big ball game, and I, when you ask the rhetorical question, I thought about the Wisconsin game last year, which did not go well, but that doesn't mean anything.
Well, it had meaning,
tomorrow.
I
mean, well, it doesn't mean anything now,
right?
But for this season, yeah, so far this game is the biggest game, and when you only play 12, every game is big. But I think this one has definite ramifications that are pretty overt.
Yeah. To me, the way I look at it is this. Whichever game, if they pull off a win in any of the next 4 weeks, it's one of the biggest games in recent history.
Yeah,
they've got to beat
State,
one.
So,
yeah, they basically, the way the calculation works is you say, okay, well, there's 3 games that you look at in the Big Ten schedule, and you say, okay, those are games that Indiana maybe, you might even go so far as to say they should win. Illinois, Minnesota, Purdue should maybe
all in Bloomington
is a pushing term. Yeah, they're all in Bloomington. Those are certainly very winnable games.
They're winnable,
and you get all 3 of those, you still only have 5
without any guarantees. They're winnable.
So not any guarantees.
But if you're trying to get to 6,
right?
You're looking at these. You're right. You're looking at these next 4
You've got to
games.
get one of them, either Missouri, Penn State,
And
Michigan
the 2
State,
road trips to
Michigan, and you've still got Ohio State, Wisconsin back there, which are going to be, obviously Indiana hasn't had a lot of luck with those 2, but really these next 4, if Indiana can pull off any one of those 4, that game becomes one of the biggest games in Indiana history. Whichever, if they get one, it's whichever one it is.
And Kevin Wilson talks a lot about staying on schedule when he's talking about his offense or trying to keep the opposing offense off schedule or whatever. If you're looking at how seasons progress and how they develop, Indiana really wants to stay on schedule right now. I mean, people looked at this schedule and they said, 4-0 would be fantastic. 2-2, probably not good enough to really get people excited. 3-1, yeah, that'll probably do it, especially if one of those wins is over Missouri, which is an SEC team. And once again, this is the only Big Ten SEC that the players and coaches are going to play that down as they should. But for perception from fans and from media and whatnot, if Indiana wins tomorrow against Missouri, Indiana fans will have bragging rights that no other Big Ten fans have for the rest of the regular season, that they beat an SEC team. So it's a big deal, and I do think it's potentially a bit of a harbinger in terms of how the rest of the season might play out. But if Indiana wants to achieve some of the goals that they have in mind, and once again, they're not going to say publicly, but they want to have a winning season. They want to go to bowl. They want to really galvanize the fan base and build fan base. This is one of those games.
Yeah, definitely. All right, thanks as always, everybody.
Thanks.
We have the game tomorrow night. Thanks.